What if the anxiety, the shutdown, the overthinking, what if none of it is actually the problem? Take a moment with that, because for many people, those experiences don't just feel uncomfortable. They feel like the thing that needs to be fixed or controlled or gotten rid of as quickly as possible. And that makes sense. If someone feels overwhelming or unpredictable or exhausting, of course the instinct is to make it stop. But what if we approach this differently? What if those experiences are not signs that something is broken, but signs that something has been trying to protect you for a long time? Not randomly, not irrationally, but in a way that actually developed for a reason. Welcome to Misunderstood Mind. This is a space where we begin to understand the patterns behind what we experience, not as dysfunction, but as adaptation. Because one of the most common questions people ask, whether they're in therapy or just sitting alone with their thoughts, is, what's wrong with me? And that question often comes with a lot of weight. It carries frustration, confusion, and often a layer of self-judgment. But in clinical work, we often shift that question. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? We begin asking, what happened and what adapted because of it? And that shift, although subtle, changes how we relate to everything that follows. Because if something is an adaptation, then it has a function. And if it has a function, then it makes sense. And if it makes sense, then we can begin to understand it instead of fighting against it. Most people come to therapy believing that their symptoms are the issue. Anxiety, emotional numbness, intrusive thoughts, overthinking, shutdown. And the goal becomes, how do I stop this? Or sometimes even, how do I make this go away completely? But from a trauma-informed and neuroscience-based perspective, many of these experiences are not random. They are patterned, and more specifically, they are learned patterns. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for safety and threat. And importantly, this isn't something you consciously control. You're not sitting there deciding, I think I feel anxious right now. It happens automatically, based on what your system has learned over time. Through repeated experience, your system begins to categorize situations. So safety, uncertain, overwhelming, and when something falls into that not safe category, your system responds. Anxiety becomes anticipation. It's your system trying to stay ahead of something, to predict what might go wrong, so it can prevent it. And overthinking becomes control. If you can think through every possible outcome, maybe you won't be caught off guard. Maybe you can avoid making a mistake or avoid feeling something uncomfortable. Shutdown or emotional numbness becomes protection. If something feels too intense, your system reduces emotional access to prevent overwhelm. And when we look at these responses this way, they begin to make more sense, not as problems, but as strategies. In EMDR, otherwise known as eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, we talk about memory networks. And this is important because it helps explain why these patterns persist. Experiences, especially emotional ones, don't just disappear. They get stored. And when they're not fully processed, they remain accessible. So something in the present moment can activate something from the past. And when that happens, your response may feel bigger than the situation itself. Not because you're overreacting, but because your system is responding to more than just what's happening right now. It's responding to what this moment represents. And that's often where confusion shows up. Because on a cognitive level, you might think, this shouldn't be affecting me this much. But on a nervous system level, it makes complete sense. Let's slow this down further. Think of your nervous system as a pattern recognition system. It is constantly asking, does this feel familiar? And more specifically, does this feel familiar to something that was overwhelming or unsafe or unpredictable before? And if the answer is yes, your system responds. Not in a measured, analytical way, but in a fast, protective way. That's why responses can feel automatic. You might notice it in your body first. A tightening in your chest, a drop in your stomach, a sense of restlessness or urgency or withdrawal before you even had time to think about what's happening. And this is where bringing in awareness of the body becomes so important, because the body often registers experience before the mind organizes it. You might take a moment here and just notice what's happening in your body right now. Not to change it, just to notice it. That awareness alone is a shift. Now, from an internal family systems perspective, we can understand these responses as coming from different parts of you, not different identities, but different protective roles. You might have a part that overthinks, a part that becomes anxious, a part that shuts things down, a part that criticizes you afterward. And each of these parts has a job. They're not trying to make things harder. They're trying to prevent something. An anxious part might be trying to prevent uncertainty. An overthinking part might be trying to prevent mistakes. A shutdown part might be trying to prevent overwhelm. And a self-critical part might be trying to prevent rejection by keeping you in line with expectations. When we understand these parts as protective, something shifts. Instead of seeing these as problems, we begin to see them as strategies. Now let's ground this in something more concrete. Let's imagine someone who notices that in relationships, when things start to feel close, they begin to pull away. They might describe this as, I'm avoidant, or I can't do relationships. But when we explore this further, we often find that closeness in the past was associated with hurt, or inconsistency, or emotional overwhelm. So the system learned closeness equals risk. And the withdrawal is protection, not failure, protection. And when this isn't understood, this is where shame comes in. Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? And from a compassion-focused perspective, shame is not just an emotion. It's a system-level response that reinforces patterns. Because instead of understanding what's happening, we turn against ourselves for experiencing it. And that intensifies everything. So what do we do with this? The goal is not to force these responses to stop, because forcing often creates more resistance. Instead, the goal is to understand them and to begin relating to them differently. One way to do this is through a simple framework. First, notice what is happening right now is the question you want to ask yourself. Second is to name. Ask the question, what is this experience? Third is locate. Ask yourself, where do you feel this in your body? Fourth, understand. Ask the question, what might this be connected to? Not in a pressured way, but in a curious way. And this is where the key shift happens. Instead of asking, why am I like this? You ask, what is this trying to do for me? And that question changes your relationship to the experience. Because now you are not fighting it. You are understanding it. And when understanding increases, shame decreases. And when shame decreases, the system becomes more flexible, more responsive, less reactive. And over time, this is what creates change. Not force, understanding. If there's one thing to take from today, it's this. Your symptoms may not be signs that something is wrong with you. They may be signs that something happened and your system adapted. And adaptation is not failure. It is intelligence. This week, you might gently ask yourself, what is one pattern I notice? And what might it be trying to protect me from? You don't need a perfect answer. Just the question is enough to begin shifting the pattern. In the next episode, we're going to go deeper into why these patterns repeat. We'll explore something called the neural echo circuit and how your brain links past experiences to present reactions, often outside of your awareness. Until then, stay curious about your patterns, not critical of them, because the more you understand your mind, the less it needs to fight to be heard.